Welcome back to Attitude Effort Results podcast presented by Teamwork Online and the Clubhouse. Today we have a special guest with us, founder of Epic Hire, Watt Williams. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me today.
We are very excited today. So we are working with Watt and his team with Epic Hire specifically for you guys, specifically for our college and young age audience. We're going to learn all about Epic Hire today, and we're going to learn from a young CEO and founder, an absolute killer across the stage. We worked with your team, had a couple conversations. Honestly, every time our team and your team get on a phone together, I'm like fired up. Like, let me run through a wall. Let me run through a wall and get better. So I'm excited for today. Honestly, let's just start from the beginning. Let the audience know kind of who you are. Tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper.
Yeah, let's see. My Tom Brady 2-minute drill. I was a student athlete in college. I thought I was going to end up on Wall Street. I studied finance. I ended up through athletics, finding a company called the Select Group, an amazing staffing organization. I spent a decade rising the ranks in the staffing space. So I was a sales rep. I then got promoted to go open up an office. So I went from Charlotte, North Carolina, out to Silicon Valley to start up a staffing office there. Found some pretty quick success with the mix of luck and skill. We got in pretty early with Apple during my time in Silicon Valley. Then for about the next 5-6 years, I was a VP overseeing opening up new offices west of Texas. And yeah, after about a 10-year journey, I had seen and done just about everything there was to see or do in the staffing world. I decided to make the move into tech. And when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to build in the technology space as a previous athlete, I had a 3-2, played soccer at NC State. So there's nothing really from an academic perspective that just screamed like winner on my resume. And that always just like kind of it rubbed me the wrong way. It was like, man, I'm up at like, I don't know, 5 a.m. at the gym, getting in ice baths, like doing my homework while I'm on a bus somewhere after we won or lost. But none of those things showed up on my resume. And so it was, I always felt this chip on my shoulder as it pertained to like, I want to create a product that really helps capture a human's character and personality, more so than just like, hey, here's my GPA and here's my school and here's my major. And then it's just like, I did this enough myself to know that it's very real. It's like resumes get read for 7 seconds and then not thrown away because we don't actually have resumes, but it's like they get glossed over. And so for me, I wanted to build a product that really drew you in to get to know the person before you looked at their resume and made a quick decision. So that's kind of how we ended up building Epic Hire and getting the conversation rolling with you guys.
I love it. I think it's very interesting. I always say on our side, like, if you can do everything you can to not submit a resume, it almost seems like that's the way to go. And the reason that is because all resumes currently have are what's on paper, right? And
Yeah.
so candidly, when I started a sales academy with the organization that I currently work for, we had to go through roughly 100 resumes in 2.5 days with 2 people. That, like, there's no way I can dig deep into that. So tell me a little bit more about Epic Hire, because you guys are creating, or you have created, a platform, and you are revolutionizing how we look at resumes and how we, not even the resume portion, how we portray individuals to companies that are deeper than words on paper. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to like one of our first concepts for Epic Hire was like we want people to tell their story through photos and videos, like through this visual mechanism. And we kept ideating around who would do this, and it was like, man, students, college students in particular, it's like they're more familiar telling their social story and telling their story in general through platforms like Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat. Like that's just how that's part of who they are, is telling their stories in that way, as opposed to pulling up Microsoft Word or a typewriter and like writing out a resume. So that was kind of this first idea of like, would students tell their professional story the same way that they tell their social story? And so we launched a a beta, call it, in June of 2023 at NC State and UNC, and it was remarkable. It was probably like the first month. We didn't have a ton of users, but the users that we did have were telling really cool stories. There was one at NC State where the student had like a battle bot. They had worked all semester long to build this robot, and they had a video of this robot just like smashing another robot to pieces. And I was like, I wonder if our old customers, like some of the people we had worked with previous, would think this was cool. Never saw the resume, never even saw the guy's profile. All we sent them was this one video of the student building this battle bot to compete in some competition. And the hiring manager that we had worked with was like, send me that guy or that girl. Like, I want to interview them now. And that was when we were like, okay, we're on to something. Like the story element, the story element is really powerful. And so how can we keep leaning into that? We've had some cool updates and iterations since, but it really started just with this idea of like, what if we could capture and create a profile that felt more like an Instagram rather than a Microsoft Word piece of paper?
Well, I think it's cool because it changed as a leader, right? From a leader's perspective, you need to have an open mind when it comes to change. And for the longest time, resumes have been words on paper. That's what
Yeah.
it is. And a hiring manager goes in, looks at the words on the paper and says, I do or do not like this person, right? But you guys are changing with the times because that's the younger generation, specifically for what you guys are looking at right now. And that's what our audience is too, which is why I love this conversation. It's because we are both helping people right now. And that's the goal that we have. Uh, like you guys are allowing the new generation to tell stories in their way, where you're not making people conform to what it's right now, but you're allowing them to tell stories in their way, which I think is so cool and why I'm very excited to continue learning about and continue helping people around it.
Yeah.
I'm curious for everybody listening. You did a very brief back on your Tom Brady 2 minute drill. It was awesome. Uh, you had a pretty successful trajectory in your career prior to making the jump. What was the process like from ending your current role to the idea of Epic Hire to then actually moving forward with it?
Yeah, I had an executive coach at the time who went through an exercise with me that was really valuable. So I had never really considered another career. I was, top 1% of the industry, top 1% of my company as it pertained to a producer within the organization. And he gave me an assignment and he said, I want you to think 5 years down the road and I want you to pretend like you're on one of those house shows. And I want you to name each of these three different paths something creative. And then I want you to build out best case scenario 5 years from now. If you pick that path, what are some of the things that are going on in your life? And so I made three paths. My paths were the steady Eddie. I was going to stay at my current company and I was going to, just chip away at being the top 0.9%, top 0.8%. The leap of faith, which was going and starting a startup. And then they call me coach. So I have a passion for sports. I'd love to get back into coaching someday. I built out each of those paths. And he was like, the assignment was wherever you feel the most excitement, lean into that. And by far, the thing that got me the most excited was, waking up every day and trying to go and compete against Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg of the world. And so for me, it was a no brainer. Then at that point, that I mentally was ready to make the move. And yeah, and then it was trusting in myself. So part of that plan, the leap of faith, was like, do you have the capacity to wake up every day and build something new and different? Like after 10 years of being in the same industry, it was pretty steady. It wasn't very complicated. And I was looking for that. I was looking for that challenge and I was looking for that growth. So I think it was big on the mindset of like, hey, I know what I'm getting into. I'm not getting into easy. I'm not signing up for like something that I've done before. I'm signing up for growth. And I can say for sure that's exactly what I've been getting the last 4 years. And it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made.
It's interesting to hear you say like you were in the top 1%. It wasn't like you were hating your job. Like, and
No, I
also
love
you
it.
weren't
Great
you weren't bad
company.
at it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it was like it was one of those where My sports career was pretty similar. It was like I was playing college soccer. I wasn't going to get to the next level. It was like no matter how hard I tried when I was in college, it was like, this is it. Like I could probably go play some level of semi-pro, etc. But like I'm not going to the Premier League. And so at that point, it was like, hey, like, do I really want to keep trying for the next 10 years to just make it to X, Y, Z? And it was like, no, I want to go and I want to play a whole new sport. I want to do something completely different. And it was it is and was. It's scary, but that's also where excitement is too.
Everybody, I think the fear of failure is very real, and leaning into that, and on a very small scale, even this podcast, like I fear the I really don't like putting my face out there on Instagram and stuff like that. That's not me, but I just fear the failure of it. It sounds like you were like, hey, I'm in, like I'm going down this path. Once you made that decision that the fear of failure was no longer going to be within you, what were the steps that you took then? Because a lot of the kids right now, a lot of college students that are getting into the professional, careers, either moving across the country, which you've done back and forth a couple
Yeah, oh yeah.
times, and down south, like you've done it a little bit. What was that process like for you?
I think a lot of your audience are athletes or people that are looking to get into that sports space. It's like more than anything, I would say would be leaning into the fundamentals that I would have learned when I was, 10, 11, 12 through sports of like hard work. Are you willing to work harder than other people in the space? And so for me, it was like, I didn't even know what I wanted to do, but I was up at 4 a.m. thinking about what I wanted to do. So like day one, that was the mindset of like, I didn't do this to do something. I didn't do this to fail. And I failed 400 times as a founder since starting this company. But I think it's the process. So it was the process through sports of like, doing the extra work, doing the extra credit stuff, right? Getting mentors, the readings in the space, practicing different things and looking at each kind of iteration of what I'm building as practicing. And like even now we're launching this really cool marketplace for student organizations where they can get their members on, interact and engage with sponsors and alumni, and help them attract more sponsors. It's like I think of that as practice. It's like we've just launched a new feature or functionality. Now it's on us to practice every single day of like how do we make this as successful as possible. And so I think that mentality probably more than anything is what kicks in, especially as a founder when you don't have someone telling you what to do. You don't have a designated 9 to 5 role of this is what you need to do. You don't check out on a Friday and turn it off. It's like it's always on. And I think just the fundamentals, probably through sports, were the key throughout of just like that work hard, practice, get advice from others. Is probably more than anything like the how it actually happens on a day in day out basis.
I love it. This question is for me because as I look to be somebody like yourself one day, and I think a lot of people listening to this podcast are the elite individuals who want to continue to grow and grow fast. You say waking up at 4 a.m. You talk about working harder than everybody. That means you have to have in some capacity some sort of routine, right? Tell me
Oh yeah.
about your routine. I want to learn from it. What does your routine look like?
Yeah, my routine is my routine, and it is work for me. There was probably a transition period when I was a sophomore in college. Uh, Up until that point, I was an All American, outstanding athlete, played every minute, never sat on the bench. It was my sophomore year, I was benched, and I was just like, I got to change something. And so at that moment in time, I was substantially smaller than everyone else. I was like, you know what? I'm going to start. I'm going to stop going out at night and partying, and I'm going to wake up every morning around 4 or 5 and go to the gym. So I started that process there. I grinded my sophomore year, really didn't play, grinded my junior year, still didn't play. Senior year, got to hit the field more, but again, soccer aside, it was a fun season. What stuck with me though was that process. So
Mm.
every day I was in bed by call it 8, 9 o'clock, and every morning I was up at 4 hitting the gym. That then carried over to my professional career. So most of my colleagues right out of school when they were joining the company I was at, like they were struggling to get in by 8. I had already been working for 3 hours by the time I'm like sitting at a computer. I'm like, man, I'm not running. I'm not in an ice bath. This is easy. I'm just at a computer building a call sheet. So the habit stuck with me. Um, and it was probably one of the best habits I've ever picked up. So for me, almost every single day, it's in bed by 8, 8:30 and up, call it 4:30, 4 to 6 a.m., somewhere in that window where I wake up, no alarm clock, excited to get up, and usually excited to practice some form of something I've got going on in the business, etc. So the sleep habit and then the kind of mental mindset in the morning would probably be two of the biggest habits that I've picked up through sports and through my professional career that have really helped me.
And I noticed when saying that you didn't talk about goals in there because your goals will come, but they're based on having those habits. And once you create one of those, like once you create one of those, that was years ago. It's still sticking with you. I love it. Fire me up. Come on, that was great. All right, I'm curious. For you've been in the hiring space
Yeah.
for over a decade, right? What is I want to start with kind of the negative. What is fundamentally broken about the hiring space, and how have you and Epic Hire kind of helped fill that gap?
Yeah, I mean, think about the game of telephone that happens. So it's like a student or anyone will submit their application. There's in a waiting game. They don't know what's happened. They assume like, oh, the hiring manager's looking at my application. It's like it's probably not the case. So they submit an application. A recruiter then has a pile of 100, 200 applications to look through. They look through each one of those in 7 to 15 second windows. They then call 10% of those. They then send to the hiring manager, I don't know, 30% of those. So, if there's 100 applicants, three of them are getting to the actual hiring manager, the person that is responsible for making the decision, interviewing the candidate. And I think it's that process, it's the uncertainty in between, the inability for the candidate to stand out both to the recruiter and then to the hiring manager. That's probably the most frustrating part of the process. It's like more often than not, the best candidate doesn't get the job because the best candidate never gets talked to. And it's really nobody's fault. The recruiter doesn't have the capacity to spend 10 minutes thoroughly analyzing 200 resumes. There's not enough time in the day, week, month to do that. And so I think the part that's really broken is it's really hard through a resume to feel like you're standing out, even if your resume is spectacular. It could just get glossed through just for an error that has no fault of your own that you would never know about and you'd probably never hear about. So I think it's really just that game of telephone, and then it's that like it's all of the stories that then go along with it. It's like I submitted my application. It's been a week. Did they not like me? What don't they like about me? They hate me. I can't believe they knew I did this back in like 2002. And you're like, no, none of that's true. Like that the recruiter probably just got busy. The recruiter probably just accidentally deleted the email. The hiring manager probably just did something like that. So it's I don't know. There's a lot of emotional energy that goes into it too. That's a big problem. That's a big problem as well.
I never thought about the emotional energy from the candidate side because I everything that you're saying obviously is very true. You're in the space and you're more intelligent than I am. I see it on the sports side all the time. I've been blessed to be in some of those conversations. I've hired for a sales academy, and that's exactly the process that happens, right? And candidly, like on in the sports world, there could be 1,000 applications because logos are sexy. Like we don't have to hide from that, right? There
Oh
could be a
yeah.
thousand applications. Well, it might start with a sales account executive looking through 100 of them because then they choose one person to go to a premium rep, and then they choose like it can start all the way at the bottom. I mean, again, I've been in the sports industry for 3 years and I'm in the hiring process. Like I'm towards the top of the hiring process. Like I haven't even been here very long. So, but I never thought about the emotional equity that goes into from the candidate side, where now all of a sudden they don't get one job, and that might pour into a second, and now a third, and now a fourth. and all of a sudden they're like, gosh, like I suck at what I do. It's like, no, you just haven't actually been given a chance. Like nobody's actually looked at it thoroughly. What are you guys doing to kind of fill that gap? Like how are you guys helping people kind of alleviate some of that pain from what you just talked about?
Yeah, like one of the biggest things we're trying to do right now is through these organizations. We're trying to help organizations like the NCSSC come into our ecosystem, bring their members, so their students that are participating, as well as their sponsors. And rather than having hiring be so transactional, we're trying to create community and engagement within our app. So it's less about, hey, I applied and I'm expecting a job in 3 weeks. And it's like, hey, I've invested time to be a part of this like ecosystem on the student side. Like I'm going above and beyond to participate in a sales competition. Like that's who I am as a person. And on the other side, it's like, yeah, we have sponsors from organizations like the Suns and 20 other sports teams that are all like, yeah, we really want to know these students. And so giving them this ecosystem where they can post content to the feed that they can engage with, giving them the ability to get on and have the courage, if you're a student, to like reach out to the hiring manager at one of these organizations and say, hey, I'm coming to the event. I would love to talk to you at the event. It's like, those are the types of things that we're trying to bring to our ecosystem that just don't happen in traditional hiring. And so for us, I think it's that element of like community that we're trying to bring to the table. And again, it's that element of storytelling. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So like being able to post that photo of you with that trophy on from this competition that you just entered and won, it's like that's what really catches the eye of, I would anticipate, people like yourself. I know that catches my eye far more than reading, I won a trophy, I won a championship in my junior year. It's like seeing it versus reading it. There's just a different experience. That's one of the key things that we're bringing to the table.
Well, in today's day and age, it's like even us getting an email right now. If an email is more than 4 lines long and 2 sentences in each line, I'm like, ah, man, I really got. All right, here we go. But like everything is so quick now, and I think that probably has something to do with how social media is, right? The clickbait scrolling, but people want a very brief picture, make a quick decision, and move on. And with words, unfortunately, like that doesn't happen sometimes.
Yeah.
So our paths cross partially from what you just said of the NCSSC, right? One of the best sales competitions in the entire country. By the time this airs, that will have already happened. And so I'm curious, like, why you guys have really seemed to resonate with students looking for career in sports specifically. Now, that's not the entire platform, but tell me a little bit about um, what the goal is behind that path.
Yeah, I think for me, being a previous student athlete, there's certainly some element of bias there of just like, I feel like more often than not, student athletes are pouring a ton into their athletics. And that's really their biggest draw is this extra credit work that they've been pouring their heart, soul, effort, energy into. And that's not all the time, but I would say there's a lot of instances where that's the case. And so I think for us, when we found the opportunity, or we even identified that there were competitions like this, it was a no-brainer for us. Like we would love to tell their stories. On the other side of that, with the professional sports teams, it is like, to your point, it's not hard to get applicants, right? Like getting applicants is not the problem. Getting the best people, that's where the competition is. And the best people, we wanted to build an ecosystem where the best people could really stand out and not only get one offer, but they could use our platform to solicit offers from 5, 6, 7 pro sports teams, like treating the people that are competing just the way that the professional sports teams treat the people that they're recruiting to come join their organizations. Like, why would there not be a bidding war for someone who's in ticket sales? If they're the best in the country, they should be getting 5, 6, 7 offers. They shouldn't just be accepting an offer from a sports team and being like, "Oh, thank you." That's not how we treat pro athletes. Why would we treat the best in the world who are doing above and beyond work at an event like an NCSSC anything differently than we would future running back or quarterback?
Fire me up. Let's
Let's
go. I
go.
love that. I love that. And it's true, right? Like I know elite individuals who are the best at what they do, and they come out and they're like, "Hey, I got this offer. Should I take it?" I'm like, "Well, it's January, and you don't start until July. You shouldn't be forced to take that." Also, there are some teams on the side that's like, "Hey, I'll need your decision in 24 hours." If you have no other offers on the table and you're a college kid coming out that doesn't necessarily understand, or maybe you do understand it a little bit, but if you have 24 hours and you don't have any other offers, you might just take the first one because you probably would like to have a career path to start, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like you get one offer and you're like, oh my God, my choices are accept this offer or go apply to 100 more jobs just to maybe hear back from one interview. It's like, that's not a positive experience. That's not an experience where an organization is competing for the best talent in the world. And so for us, we aim to bring student organizations that truly are the best talent in the world, and we aim to help them get competitive offers from one, two, five, 10 different organizations that like really want the best talent. They just don't, they're not doing it just to hit a number of like, I need any SDR. I need any ticket sales rep. I need any fill in the gap. It's like, we want the best. That's what we're focused on, is helping them find the best and help the best feel like there's a platform for them to really stand out.
Tell everybody. I know we're obviously my career path is the sales side. The National Collegiate Sports Sales Competition is all focused towards sales. Tell me the broader categories that you guys work with for everybody listening that's not specifically going to sports sales right now.
Yeah, computer science, engineering. So think of your like hackathons. It's another big area where we partner with organizations that are throwing hackathons, or student organizations like the product space organization, where they're doing really cool consulting work for companies across the country through probably 15, 20 different chapters. And then on the engineering side, working with cool organizations like Formula SAE, building race cars, taking these race cars and racing them in Michigan every year. It's a phenomenal event. And pretty much if you're a Ford, Rivian, Tesla, this is your event. I mean, these are the students you want to be hiring from. And yeah, those are probably our three biggest verticals: would be your business and sales, your engineering, and then your computer science.
You are a young CEO, right? We don't have to hide behind that, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
but we got the baby face.
And obviously, like with an up and coming startup, right? It's already, you guys have already received accolades like the top 10 tech startup to watch. Like you guys are growing very fast and you're very good at what you do. The title of our podcast, Attitude Effort Results. I always enjoy asking the question, like, what does attitude effort results mean to you? When we initially talked, it kind of already seemed to hit home, and you could obviously correct me if I'm wrong. If you do, we might have to cancel the podcast, but that's all right. How is being cognizant of that attitude, of your effort that has kind of led you to the results right now? Like, how has that allowed you to receive those kind of massive amounts of success so far?
It probably goes back to, you used the word habit earlier. It's like it's a habit. It's a process. It's the attitude of waking up and being, yeah, I'm gonna be a badass today. Yeah, I'm gonna get after it. I'm gonna win today. That then drives the effort. It's like, okay, how bad do you want this? It's like, I want it really bad. So let's go. And then the results always follow. And so I think it's like setting the stage with the attitude each and every day that then drives the effort, which ultimately drives the result. So I think for me, I probably think about the title of your podcast more as a habit, a process, that helps.
I love it. Tell me, all right, now, one, the business side of this, like for me, just having the opportunity and access to listen to how you create, you have not been given anything. You've created where you're at now. Tell me a little bit about what you do outside of business. Like who is Watt Williams outside of the business world?
Uh, Go start your own startup, and you'll find pretty quick. It requires, if you want to do it right, it requires a phenomenal amount of effort and energy. Yet, I am a dad, so I've got two wonderful kids, an awesome wife. So if I'm not at the office burning it down, I am almost certainly with one of those two rugrats running around park playing soccer. One of our favorite restaurants, Bowstring, and I would say that is about 95.7% of my time is focused on winning at Epic Hire and then hanging out with my family. Hey, previous lives, I'm a big video gamer as well. I don't get to game as much as I would like to these days. And I still play some intramural rec soccer, which is a
Oh,
ton of fun.
that's awesome. It's interesting to hear. One, I had a feeling that 97% of your time was going to be towards the company and family, right? As a startup goes, and I've had the opportunity to sit in rooms with people who have done that with the company that I work for right now. Uh, when you're looking to grow, when you're looking to scale a company, what percentage of your time is spent in the office working and at home? Because I think there's this notion of like work life balance. Like I work from, even call it, you're there early from 6 to 5, and then as soon as I get home, now it's all family time. But I'm assuming there's some work being done at home. What does that relationship look like on your side?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would start just with this concept of like work life balance. I think it's something that is it's probably misguided in some ways. It's like I think to build something special, it requires sacrifice, and more often than not, you have to be understanding of what you're willing to sacrifice. And so, for me, outside of my family and kids, it's like I'm comfortable sacrificing time out with friends. I'm comfortable sacrificing things that most people would take as like, no, that's more important. And I think in the world, especially of finding success in a startup, it requires a tremendous amount of effort, energy, focus. For me personally, then outside of just that, it's like yeah, I'm typically doing my quiet time meditation strategy work from that 4 to 6 a.m. window. I usually get into the office around 7:30, usually here till around 5. Kids go down around 7, 7:30. Spend 30 minutes then with my wife. I'm back in bed by 8, 8:30 after getting after it all over again. And predominantly I'm in the office. I'm a big believer that the cohesivity, the collaboration, the like seeing other people is extremely important to building a successful organization. I think that there's a different phase too where it could switch. But I think in the space of a startup where things are constantly changing, growing, evolving, there's a huge need for being together and being in a communication setting where something can change and the organization can change with it in the span of like 30 minutes. And so most of the time I'm in the office. And then I think work life balance, it's like, yeah, back to that sacrifice piece. I think people that end up wanting to go the startup route, it's like you're sacrificing the short term for the work. I'm going to work my ass off for 10 years. And then if I choose to, my reward might be I'm balanced and I'm retired by the time I'm 40, or I'm on a boat by the time I'm 40 and doing nothing but that, or I'm coaching little league soccer and financially safe in that phase of life. I think what I'm trying to get at is I'd be of the belief that if you go down that founder entrepreneurial path, you're more than likely sacrificing the short term balance for long term long term balance, I guess.
How important is it to have a support system around you when you're going through this? Obviously, your wife, obviously, your kids. But you mentioned earlier, one of the first things you mentioned, you had was it a life coach or a mentor that you had? Like, how
Yeah.
important is it to have people like that around you? And how'd you go about finding who those people were?
Yeah, mentors are phenomenal. I feel like my faith has been a huge driver for me in the dark, crazy moments of startup life as well. So I think finding mentors is something I was a big believer of when I was at my last organization. That was something that was taught top down. One of them, Don Yeager, he's actually a well-known author in the professional sports space. He came and spoke to an event that we had at the Select Group. I was blown away by the presentation, wrote him a letter, wrote him another one, called him. Finally, I was like, yeah, listen, like, if you'll drive down to Florida to meet me, I will be your mentor. Did it. And he was a mentor of mine for 3, 4 years. That kind of taught me too. It was almost anyone will be willing to be your mentor. It's just what level of effort are you willing to put in to get there? Like, are you willing to get the no on the first note, the second note, the third note? Are you willing to drive 8, 9 hours to meet somebody? Most people have an affinity for giving back to others, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And that doesn't mean they'll give back to everyone. So I think figuring out how to go above and beyond, and also having a really, really clear sense of why you're doing it, and a really clear sense of like, I would benefit greatly if this person would invest their time with me. So I'd be willing to go above and beyond to get them to do that is critically important for it. If you're going to end up in that space with good mentors in your life.
Well, and for good mentors and for people like yourself, you don't want to get a mentor who's below you. You want to get a mentor who's been there and who's above you, right? So
Yeah.
candidly, they should not value their time for everybody,
Yeah.
because not everybody
That's
wants
it.
to work as hard, right? So even on our side, like when somebody reaches out to me and wants to have a conversation to connect them with individuals in the sports industry, like happy to do that. But are you going to send me one message on LinkedIn, or are you going to find my email? Are you
Yeah.
going to LinkedIn message me? Are you going to go through other avenues and other people that you know to connect with me? Are you going to listen to the podcast, know who I am, and come prepared with good questions? You don't come prepared with good questions for the first time. Like, I'm not going to talk to you again. Like, unfortunately, like I have, 10, 20 people reaching out every single week. Like I don't have that much time. I value time with my wife also, which is
Yeah.
probably important and why we both get to wear rings. Um,
Yeah.
but you have to be able to value that time. You mentioned right when you said it after the 8, 9 hour drive. You're like, hey, if you're willing to drive to Florida, I was like, you never mentioned living in Florida
Oh yeah.
as
From
part of your
North
career
Carolina.
path.
It was wild. It was wild. Just for an
That's
hour dinner.
awesome.
Hour dinner. And it was like, all right, going on back now. And it radically shifted, I don't know, or shaped 2, 3 years of my life. Just that
Wow.
mentorship, that partnership. And now he's become somewhat of a friend I could reach out to. And yeah, it's been a cool experience.
You drove 18 hours to have a 1 hour lunch.
I'm going to call it like, I don't know how far North Carolina is to Charlotte is to Florida, but whatever that drive was. Yep.
Well, Charlotte to Miami is 10 and a half. I've done that one before.
It was, yeah. So I'm going to call it like 8 to 10. We drove eight to
Okay.
10 for one dinner. I think we ate at, I want to say it was at FSU's campus.
Honestly, if you guys didn't listen to anything else today, you now know why he's a killer. Like that's the stuff that you have to do. There's not a lot of people willing to make those sacrifices. Not a lot of people willing to go above and beyond for a chance. Like you could have gone down there and he could have said, "I don't really like you at all. Like I'm never talking again." That's a real opportunity. That's a real
Yeah.
chance. I love
Yeah.
it. All right.
100%.
I got a couple more questions for you, really tailored toward valuing towards our audience and your audience. Again, I think there's a lot of synergies there. How can students right now get involved with Epic Hire to help catapult their start of their career path?
Yeah, two main ways. If you are part of a student organization, coming into our ecosystem and bringing your organization. So one of the best use cases for Epic Hire is you come onto our organization, or you come onto our platform, you create your organization starts to interact and engage with one another. We'll then find you. We'll then seek you out. We'll then work to find you sponsors. So if you are an organization of high achieving students and you have your members in our ecosystem, we are heavily incentivized to help you find sponsors, which is of great benefit. We help organizations turn their executive meetings that usually happen at a fast food chain into steak dinners, into treating their student organizations less like student organizations and more like the businesses that they are. So that would be one way. This second way students could get involved with us if they're not a part of a student organization is coming on, telling their story through creating a really cool profile, and then checking out some of the amazing partners that we work with on the employer side that are looking to hire students just like them. Those would be the two main ways. So students who are in organizations and then students who aren't getting value through our ecosystem.
When you go through that, I'm actually curious. When you go through that, talking about student organizations, are these sales clubs at universities? Are these frats and sororities? What type of student organizations do you guys typically work with?
It's both. So we just signed, NCSSC would be a great example. So we have like competitions. They could be sports teams. They could be Greek life chapters. They could be clubs. They could be programs. So like an Eller sales program is one of our early beta partners in the space. Those would be some good examples.
Well, I know you. We've been helping your team connect with some sports organizations. We did. I talked with 14 schools in last semester, and we have 8 schools lined up for this semester already. And those are all either sales programs or sport business programs. A couple frats and sororities. Miami Law was one of them. It was awesome. I was the least educated person on the entire call, and I was the one speaking, so that was fun. So I'll connect with you guys and we can get some of those rolling too. Obviously, we have good relationships with those.
Yeah, I mean, I think from y'all's perspective too, right? It's like when you think about what your relationship is like with those organizations, it's like, wouldn't it be a really cool way for you not just to feel like I have to go on campus to speak to them? It's like, yeah, I could post content of my podcast in a thread on Epic Hire that they could then listen to, or I could meet their executive board through an app, shoot them a direct message of like, hey, saw this, I'm going to be on campus on this date. Might I be able to speak with your chapter? And so trying to streamline that both from a organization standpoint as well as a potential sponsor like you guys might be.
I love it. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. What did I miss? What did I not ask Watt Williams that I should, and while I have the opportunity?
Oh, what did you miss? Let's see. I thought you did a phenomenal job. You guys are your energy, man. I love it. You bring the energy. I'm sure that's what your audience loves about you. I think you captured most everything I would have thought of. So yeah, great job.
Deal. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you very much for valuing your time to give back to our audience today. I'm excited to continue working with you guys. You guys are not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere, and we can continue helping the college generation, the young professionals.
Yeah, look forward.
Awesome. Well, that's all we got for today. Let's continue to inspire others